This is my Games Prototyping 1, Project 1. First mechanic I'm going to be showing off is the door opening and close. So really simple, once you're in proximity it'll open, once you're out of proximity you can't interact with it anymore. And it'll close smoothly once you leave the area. The way this works is I have an E2Interact set up on the player character script, which once you press E on the keyboard it'll send it through to an interact, which can then be used as an event. This event will, whatever you put it on, will have a need to interact on it. The way I've made it work is I have, once your player enters a collision box around the door, it will then set a bool to true, which is if the player is inside or not. Once the player leaves, then it'll be set to not inside. So if the player is inside, which is true, it'll then go over to the timeline node, which then will slowly open the door. It'll send it to the rotator. The timeline node goes from 0 to closed, from 1 to open. Send it to the rotator, which will then set it to the relative rotation, which will place it in the game. And then for it to close, once you leave the area, the door will then play in reverse and close the same way. And it'll just look smooth, nice, and presentable. The next mechanic I'm going to be showing off is the light. So if I go inside of the building and press E, turns the light on. It's a simple E on, E off. The way this works is the same E2Interact script that I used on the door that's on the player character. This will also check if the player is inside of the radius, which is this box right here. And then if the player is, it'll toggle light. If the player isn't, it won't do anything. The toggle light is an event which will just toggle the visibility of the light, which is by default off, and on, which gives you a simple yet nice looking light on and off. In the next mechanic, I've got some coins, which when you pick them up, it removes them from the scene and adds it to a coin counter. This is done pretty easily with a coin counter which I made on the first person character. And once the character enters the coin sphere, it'll be deleted from the game, and a counter will add +1 onto the counter on the first person character, which will then add it onto the UI right here, which will change the text to the coin number, and then just down here it'll add it to the viewport of the player. The way I've organized my project is using labeled and colored folders, so textures would be custom textures I add to the project. Starter content is the content that comes with Unreal Engine, which you can just download. Import action is for triggers and stuff like E2Interact, and blueprints is all the stuff I've showed off, like the coins, doors, lights, and other stuff you might make with blueprints that can be reused easily. And that is all.